Part 1, the day they decided we took up too much space. My name is Claire Donovan, and I was 38 years old when my father decided my daughter and I were taking up more room than we deserved. He didn't call first. He didn't text. He didn't ask if it was a good time. He simply appeared in my backyard on a Wednesday afternoon in Dayton, Ohio, standing at the edge of the patio like a man inspecting land he already believed belonged to him. Next to him was a woman in a fitted blazer and low heels, holding a clipboard. A measuring tape hung loosely from her wrist. A realtor. My older sister Angela hovered near the sliding glass door with her husband Mark, their twin boys circling the yard on balance bikes. The tires rolled straight through the chalk drawings my daughter had spent the entire morning creating on the patio stones. Flowers. Roads. Little houses with smoke curling from the chimneys. Gone in seconds. Dad didn't notice. Or maybe he did and didn't care. "Stop being selfish," he said, pointing toward the swing set. His voice was loud, flat, practiced. "Your sister's boys need a bigger yard." The realtor nodded and scribbled something down, as if that sentence belonged on an official document. "We're listing the house next week," my father continued. "You'll move into the garage apartment." Mark laughed. Not awkwardly. Not nervously. He laughed like someone who had just heard very good news. "Finally," he said, scanning the yard like he was already rearranging it in his head. "A real house for real family." I smiled. Not because I agreed. Not because I was okay. I smiled because I had learned, very early in life, that smiling was how you survived moments like this. My daughter Maya stood on the back step, clutching a paper butterfly she'd cut out for the kitchen window. Dried glue still dotted her fingers. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. Instead, she folded the butterfly carefully in half and pressed it to her chest, like she was trying to make it smaller. Like she was trying to make herself smaller. My throat tightened. My hands went cold. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them to get out of my yard, out of my life, out of my child's sense of safety. But my family had trained me to be the calm one. The fixer. The daughter who didn't make scenes. So I smiled again. Thinner this time. "Okay," I said. Dad looked satisfied, like he'd just closed a deal. The realtor glanced up. "Thursday for photos?" she asked. "Thursday works," my father replied, without looking at me once. Maya glanced up at me then, quick and careful, like a bird checking the sky for danger. I squeezed her shoulder gently. "Go get your shoes, sweetheart," I said softly. She nodded and went inside without a sound. My father watched her go and didn't flinch. That was the injustice, standing in plain daylight while my child was quietly erased, her displacement discussed like a storage problem. I worked as a structural engineer. Long hours. Steady pay. The kind of job people assumed meant you were doing just fine. I was also a widow. 2 years earlier, my husband had died in a car accident on an icy stretch of highway outside Cincinnati. No warning. No goodbye. Just a phone call that split my life in half. After that, Maya and I were all each other had. She was adopted, something my parents liked to forget when it suited them. They never said it outright, but they treated her like she was temporary. Family photos where she was asked to take the picture. Birthday parties where she got a generic card while the twins tore through layers of wrapping paper. My mother called her, "that sweet little girl," never her name. My father liked to say things like, "She's lucky you took her in." As if love were charity. And the worst part? I kept showing up anyway. That afternoon, after they left, I stood alone on the patio staring at the chalk dust smeared into pale gray streaks. Maya's tiny city was gone. One of the twins had glanced back earlier and said, "Oops," like it was funny. Mark had shrugged. "We'll redo all this anyway." Maya hadn't said a word. She'd picked up her folded paper butterfly and set it on the kitchen counter like she didn't know where to put herself. I should have known then that if I didn't stop this now, I'd spend the rest of my life watching my child learn that love was conditional, and space was something you had to earn. That night, after everyone left, I did exactly what I said I would. I started packing. Quietly. Carefully. I pulled boxes out of the garage apartment, the one my father was so eager to assign me like a punishment. I filled one with Maya's books, one with kitchen items, one with her framed school photo. Maya sat on the rug with her stuffed fox, watching me tape the boxes shut. Finally, very softly, she asked, "Did I do something wrong?" That sentence felt like someone pressing a thumb into a bruise. "No," I said immediately. "You didn't. Are we getting kicked out?" I didn't lie. "We're not staying where we're not wanted." She nodded like she understood more than an 8-year-old should. Then she went to her room and started packing a backpack. She already knew how to leave. Part 2, the message that wasn't meant to be found. It was almost 10:40 p.m. when my phone buzzed. I was standing in the kitchen, sealing the last box, when the vibration startled me so badly I nearly dropped the tape dispenser. Unknown number. One message. Don't leave. Check the basement. Grandma. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My grandmother didn't text. Ever. She hated phones. Said the buttons were too small and messages felt like whispering through walls. If she needed me, she called. Or she waited until I visited and spoke slowly, deliberately, like she wanted every word to land. This message felt urgent. It felt hidden. I set the phone face down on the counter and stood there, listening to the house. It was too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes every sound inside your head feel louder. Down the hall, I could hear Maya's dresser drawer opening and closing softly. She was packing without being told. That realization made my stomach twist. I walked to her doorway. She was sitting on the floor folding t-shirts with careful precision, lining them up inside her backpack. Her stuffed fox sat beside her like a silent assistant. "Hey, kiddo," I said gently. She looked up. Her face was calm, too calm. "Can you stay in your room for a minute?" I asked. "I need to check something downstairs." She nodded without asking what. That scared me more than if she'd protested. I grabbed the heavy flashlight from the kitchen drawer, the one my dad insisted stay there, just in case, and walked to the basement door. It stuck like it always did. The old wood creaked loudly as I pulled it open. I paused, listening, then started down the steps. Each one complained under my weight. The basement smelled like concrete, dust, and old paint. A place meant to store things, not secrets. The chest freezer hummed in the corner. It wasn't even in use. Dad had always insisted it stay plugged in. Said it was good to have options. I'd thought it was strange, but not strange enough to question. Now my eyes locked onto it like it was alive. I moved toward the back wall and froze. The paint behind the freezer was a slightly different shade. Not obvious. Not unless you were looking for it. My heart started racing. I crouched, ran my hand along the baseboard, and felt it. An uneven seam. A panel. My fingers slipped into the narrow gap and pulled. It came loose easily. Too easily. Behind it was a narrow cavity between the studs. My breath caught as my hand brushed against cold metal. I reached inside and pulled out a small lockbox and a thick envelope wrapped in plastic. My hands were shaking. The envelope had my name written across the front in careful cursive. Claire. Not to the family. Not for emergencies. Just me. I carried everything upstairs like it might shatter if I moved too fast. I set it on the kitchen table and sat down without opening anything. I needed a moment to breathe. To convince myself this was real. Then I broke the seal. The letter was on top. My grandmother didn't waste words. Claire. If you're reading this, your father has tried to take the house. I told him no. He didn't listen. This home is not a prize for whoever yells the loudest. It's yours. You kept it alive. You kept me alive. You kept that little girl alive when no one else bothered to learn her heart. I changed the trust. I recorded it. Your father is no longer the trustee. You are. He will try to rush you. He will try to scare you. Don't let him. Call the attorney inside. And Claire, check the lockbox. You deserve to know what he's been doing with my money. Love. Grandma. My chest tightened so hard I thought I might be sick. I read it again. Then a third time. My hands trembled as I opened the folder beneath the letter. Documents slid out onto the table. Legal. Official. Stamped. A trust amendment naming me as trustee. A recorded deed transfer, already filed. Already done. My father had stood in my backyard with a realtor while having no legal right to sell the house. But the lockbox was worse. I opened it with the small key taped inside the envelope. Inside were bank statements and handwritten notes. Withdrawals that didn't match my grandmother's care costs. Checks made out to cash. Transfers to my father. Transfers to Angela. Beside one entry, Grandma had written in the margin. Asked him what this was for. He lied. My mouth went dry. This wasn't just entitlement. This was theft. This was draining an elderly woman while she sat in assisted living, trusting her son to protect her. Suddenly, everything clicked. The urgency. The backyard ambush. The way my father had already planned my displacement. They weren't just greedy. They were desperate. They needed the house sale to cover what they'd taken. I walked down the hall and checked on Maya. She was asleep on top of her blanket, her backpack still open beside the bed like she'd fallen asleep mid-escape. Her stuffed fox was tucked under her chin. Something settled in my chest. Not rage. Clarity. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to draw one clean boundary that didn't need permission. Part 3, the moment everything shifted. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. The house was quiet in a way that felt different from the night before. Not heavy. Not tense. Focused. At 8:12 a.m., I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and dialed the number my grandmother had written at the bottom of her letter. The attorney answered on the second ring. Your grandmother told me this call might come, he said calmly. I gave him my name. There was a pause. Then, you are the trustee. Your father has no authority. He hasn't for months. My shoulders dropped, like I'd been holding them up around my ears without realizing it. I told him about the realtor. His voice hardened. He has no legal right to list that property. We'll send formal notice today. After the call, I didn't sit and process. I moved. I called the bank. I stopped the automatic transfers. Removed linked accounts. Changed passwords. Requested transaction reviews. One by one, confirmation emails rolled in. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt lighter. Maya padded into the kitchen in her socks and froze when she saw the boxes stacked neatly by the wall. I knelt in front of her. We're not moving today, I said. Her eyes widened. So, my room is still my room? Yes. She smiled carefully, like the smile might disappear if she made it too big. The fallout started almost immediately. Missed calls. Voicemails. A text from my father. Why aren't the transfers going through? I stared at the message for a long moment before replying. I'm not funding a family that treats my child like she doesn't matter. At 2:15 p.m., they showed up. No warning. My father marched up the front steps like he owned them. Angela followed, her face tight and pale. Mark trailed behind her, jaw clenched. Dad stopped short when he saw the boxes. "You came to your senses," he said. "You can't list this house," I replied calmly. He scoffed. "Watch me." I held up the folder. "Grandma changed the trust. I'm the trustee. The house isn't for sale." The shift was immediate. Angela whispered, "She wouldn't." "She did," I said. Mark muttered under his breath, "Real family needs space." That's when Maya appeared behind me. Barefoot. Stuffed fox in hand. Mark smiled at her. "Looks like you'll have a cool little apartment soon." My father still didn't look at her. I stepped back and closed the door. Then I locked it. Maya tugged on my shirt. "Are they mad?" "Yes," I said. "Are we okay?" I looked down at her and told the truth. "We are." Outside, they yelled. Inside, for the first time in a long time, we were safe. I stayed with my back against the door long after their voices faded, not because I was afraid they'd break in, but because I needed to feel the weight of that decision settle into my bones. For the first time in my life, I hadn't explained myself. I hadn't softened the blow. I hadn't negotiated my boundaries into something easier for them to swallow. I had simply said no. Maya stood beside me, her fox tucked under one arm, the other hand gripping my shirt like an anchor. She wasn't watching the door. She was watching me. That mattered. That night, after Maya fell asleep, I listened to the voicemails. My mother cried in the first one. Said she didn't understand how things had gone so far. Said family shouldn't treat each other like strangers. Angela left 2 messages, one angry, one shaking. Both carefully avoided saying Maya's name. My father left the last voicemail. "You've humiliated me," he said. "You think you're protecting that child, but you're tearing this family apart. You'll regret this." I saved it. Not for revenge. For documentation. The next few days were a blur of emails and paperwork. The attorney confirmed the trust amendment and sent formal notice revoking my father's authority. The bank flagged the withdrawals for review. My grandmother's assisted living facility updated their records, listing me as the sole decision-maker. 2 days later, my father showed up there. I wasn't present, but the nurse told me what happened. Grandma was sitting in the common room when he walked in. She looked straight at him and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I know what you did." He didn't argue. He left. Angela came later, crying, trying to hug her. Grandma didn't move. "You wanted the house," she said quietly. "You didn't want the people in it." Mark never came. When the money stopped, everything unraveled faster than I expected. Angela called, saying they might lose their rental. "You have to help," she said. "I don't," I replied. She accused me of letting her kids suffer. "I'm not your backup bank," I said, and hung up. My father tried showing up at my job. Security walked him out. I didn't feel victorious. I felt finished. Part 4, The Quiet That Followed. Something changed in the weeks after that. Not loudly. Not all at once. It happened in small, almost invisible ways. Maya stopped flinching every time my phone buzzed. She stopped asking if it was okay to take up space. One afternoon, I came home from work and found her standing in front of the refrigerator, carefully taping one of her drawings to the door. She looked at me like she was waiting to be corrected. I didn't say anything. She smiled and went back to coloring. That was new. The boxes stayed in the spare room instead of the garage apartment. I unpacked them slowly, deliberately, like I was reclaiming territory. Maya helped, stacking her books back onto the shelf as if each one mattered. The house felt different. Not perfect. But ours. My phone still lit up sometimes. I didn't answer. When I did listen to the voicemails, there were no apologies. Just confusion. Accusations. Guilt dressed up as concern. My mother said, "I don't recognize you anymore." I thought, good. A week later, my grandmother came over for lunch. She moved carefully with her walker, but her eyes were bright. She looked around the kitchen and smiled. "You kept it alive," she said again, like she needed me to hear it twice. Maya brought her a glass of water without being asked. Grandma squeezed her hand. "This is your home," she told her. Maya nodded, like that was something she was finally allowed to believe. That afternoon, Maya asked if she could repaint the old birdhouse in the backyard. We set it on the patio and painted together. Purple roof. Yellow sides. A crooked heart on the front. "This one stays," Maya said, pressing dirt around the base of a newly planted maple tree. "Yes," I told her. "It stays." By December, the silence had settled in. No invitations. No holiday plans. No apologies. And the silence felt like a gift. We decorated our own tree. Grandma came over, steady on her walker, smiling more than I'd seen in years. On Christmas morning, Maya opened a sketchbook and a box of markers like they were treasure. She sat on the floor and drew quietly. When she finished, she walked to the refrigerator and taped the picture up herself. 3 stick figures holding hands. Me. Mom. Grandma. The house. The yard. The maple tree. No asking. No fear. That was the closure. Not winning. Not revenge. Just my child standing in her own home, knowing she didn't have to earn her place, or pack a bag in the middle of the night, ever again.